Hello and welcome to another episode of the Investor Financing Podcast. And on today's show, we have a really interesting topic that's often overlooked. We're going to be talking about benchmarking expenses, conservation, energy efficiency consulting, and ways property owners can actually reduce operating expenses. Everybody's always talking about let's increase rents and do such. And we all know that the rents have been steadily increasing pretty rapidly over the last couple of years. And at some point, that's going to end, and we're going to have a flattening or even a possible decline in rent growth. So, what are some things that property owners can do to be proactive, right? Because if we lower expenses, we get a higher net operating income. So that's another way to increase or force appreciation in your building. So please welcome Tina Larsson. And they specialize in consulting to co-ops, condo owners, multifamily owners. And we're going to talk about some things that maybe you who owns a 20 or 30 or 40 unit building might not be looking at doing right now. And if we could show you a way where you could drastically reduce expenses, I think it's well worth your time to stay tuned and watch this episode. And please always like and subscribe these videos. And if you're on iTunes or Stitcher later on, please leave a review. It helps get more reviews, more eyes on the content or ears on the content, which helps other people out there find the show. And then we can also bring on more and more guests to talk about topics that should interest you if you're watching this channel, because we talk about real estate investing and business ownership. And this is a great topic that's never talked about. So welcome to the show, Tina. How are you?
Hi, Beau. Thank you so much for having me. This is a great podcast. I've listened to many episodes and it is really fantastic to be here. And thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so let's kind of dive in and tell me about the Folson Group and like your core services, because I think this is going to be really kind of interesting for people to actually think about. Like, I know you also do construction administration. So you'll do competitive bids and so forth. And that's huge too, because I hear a lot of property owners and the biggest pet peeve of theirs is getting projects done on the bid on time and so forth. So give us kind of like a 5,000 foot view of your company and what you do and how you guys came together to start this company.
Well, you have a very good understanding of what we do. So we reduce the ongoing operating costs. And that can be anything from, the small costs like phone lines going into the building to the common areas themselves. And so that's very small costs, but you never know, that could add up to a lot of money too. And over time, there's no reason to pay Verizon if you can pay, if you can keep it for yourself, right? So it's ongoing operating costs. And that includes larger items like the heating the building, heating the water, and electricity for the common areas. And then it can be in large apartment complexes, it's like elevator service contracts, etc. And then on the construction side, on the repair side, it's anything from replacing elevator, windows, roof repairs, facade inspections in New York City. But the ongoing operating cost, one of the larger items, it's going to be energy reduction, because we're all trying to save the planet, right?
So give us some low-hanging fruit. Like when you first talk to a property owner, what documents do you want to see right away to kind of start doing your assessment on like energy efficiency? Are you looking for electric bills? The age of the property? Is there like, first you probably look for the low-hanging fruit, like can we replace windows, can we put solar on? How do you start benchmarking these expenses?
Yeah, so we have a benchmark of hundreds of properties and thousands of line items, and we compare our clients' costs, because very often if they only own or on the board of one building, they only see the expenses in installation, right? They don't know what's compared to. They don't know if 10,000 or $1 million is high or low. So we start with benchmarking it versus our benchmark. And then what we do is, so we compare, and then we find the outliers, and then we have a list of what is the lowest investment or the highest ROI. Upgrading light fixtures and or electricity, reducing how much electricity they use for the building, not for the apartments, but for the building, is very often a very, very low ROI. It's typically less than 2%, or 2 years. I mean, it's a very high ROI, and that's somewhere that is one of the items that we normally always start with.
So essentially, if I'm hearing you correct, you'll do like a benchmark on going from whatever lighting to LED lighting, for example, and then it's going to cost, let's say it's $50,000 to do the work. Then you basically say, okay, your ROI in 3 years time or whatever that time frame, you'll have paid off this because you're saving X amount per month and so forth. So yeah. The owner is going to be able to like actually know when this upgrade is going to pay for itself, and then ongoing is going to be infinite in return, essentially.
That's correct. And then what we do also is that states and local governments, they very often have incentives. We will make sure, very often people or consultants make sure that they file for them, but we actually make sure that they get the money too. So so we do everything from start to finish, and we oversee the project. We make sure that the contractors show up. We help with evaluating what contractors are the best solution for them, for the particular property owner. And so we do everything from beginning to end. And then afterwards, we share their savings. So if there's no savings, if we don't actually see the savings, then we won't get compensated. So one of the things that we do is that we make sure that it happens. And that is one of there's so many things going on when it comes to running a building, that it's very often that, oh, there was a gas leak and now we have to take care of that. And then we forget about this, right? So we make sure that each project actually happens. And then we calculate the savings for the 24 months after our implementation.
So if I heard you correct, you're performance based. So
yes,
if the first 2 years, if you save the property owner $100,000 a year, you would split those fees for the first 24. You would split the savings for the first 2 years, and then whatever happens later is all their savings. So really, the proof's in the pudding, we like to say. So you guys say, hey, we're not charging you anything to do this. For the energy efficiency. Now, when you get into the kind of contract administration for construction services, is that just a retainer fee type of thing, or are you benchmarking that as well? And you're just
That's a percent of the project. So
sure.
If it's $1 million project, then our fee is a percentage of that $1 million project.
Sure. And okay, that makes sense. So going back, so everybody listening, the takeaways here is there's lots of things you can do. They have hundreds of line items that they benchmark: heating, water, sewer, electricity. There's probably many. I mean, there's literally 100 different, probably property taxes if they're overpaying on property taxes. What are just give us a few other examples of line items that you operational
insurance.
Yes.
Yeah. Insurance is a big one. And for insurance, there's no initial fee because they're paying insurance anyways, right? So if they have an insurance quote of $100,000 or a renewal quote, and we come in at $50,000, they don't have to pay anything for the actual quote. And then they split the savings again for 2 years with us afterwards. And when it comes to insurance, we have huge savings. Very often the insurance has not been bid out. So it's there, they signed on with this broker for this insurance 10 years ago, and then every year it just renews. And typically over a long-term period of time, we've seen a 2.5% increase every year, which is fine, 2.5%. I mean, there was no inflation, but it's been 2.5%. This year, we've seen insurance increases by 8-10%. And in many cases, we have seen insurances that double this year.
Give me an example of a recent client. Let's just call it, I don't know, just if it's a 10 or 20 unit. Give us an idea on a multifamily property, which was one of your good successes, and kind of, how much you were able to reduce expenses on their line item, their operational expenses.
Yes. So it's typically 5 to 10% if the board is very active and actively take our recommendations. So in some cases, they take some of our recommendations, but not all. But if they take pretty much all our recommendations, then it's 5 to 10%. So one of our clients, we were able to save them on their insurance. I believe it was 40% the first year, but the second year we bid it out and didn't even, our insurance broker. So we are not insurance brokers. So our insurance broker, he didn't even better job. So the second year we reduced the total reduction was actually 62% on insurance. So that was a great success story. We have upgraded many buildings, their electricity to put in their basement and common areas, including their hallways in the corridors of an apartment building. We reduce their electricity use, and we install LED, but on motion sensors. And that is our go-to. We always recommend motion sensors, not always do boards. Property owners do, but boards do not always want motion sensor. For some reason, they're against that. They think that it's going to be dark, but it's not, because if you walk in there, there's going to be light.
And do you also like if it's shared utilities, do you also help like sub-meter or put some kind of like RUB system in place? So like
yes,
so that's another big item. So if I heard you correctly, target goal overall on their line item is to, whatever their operational expenses are, you're looking to get a 5 to 10% reduction of those operational expenses.
That's our goal going
Okay.
in. That's what we try for, and in many cases it happens, but not always. And
So
it's really,
yeah, is the cost reduction your kind of flagship service, or the other services? Where do you really, I mean, seems like you have like kind of three kind of core services. You do the construction admin kind of a thing, you do the cost reduction, right? Can you give me a little overview of the kind of flagship services?
yeah. So our flagship service is cost reduction. And it's both for cost reduction of ongoing operating expenses and also projects. Any renovation, we counter bid what they already have. Those two, if you want to lump them together, that's our core. But more and more so have we seen buildings who feel that they're too overwhelmed and they have other projects that they don't really have time to work on. So that our project management side has actually grown. It's become more of an in demand. And I think that with all of these different, there's an increase in building codes to keep buildings and residents safe, right? And those codes have just increased. So there's one after the next, and it's just become so much. And that is anything from keeping elevators safe to facades to now in New York, you have to have parking garage inspections every 7 years, I think. And that just came into law this year. You have to have gas inspections. So the laws are just increasing at the rate where boards just have to do something, and they don't have the resources to do it. And even property owners too, they don't have the resources to do it. So I think that that's why our project management arm has grown faster.
You're listening to the Investor Financing Podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Hi, this is Beau, host of the Investor Financing Podcast. I appreciate you checking out our channel. On this podcast, we talk about real estate, investing, financing, business lending, and acquiring and expanding your business. I'm sure you will find some videos here that will help you build your business empire. There's a lot to see. Take your time and make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks again. And so you're based in New York, and I'm assuming that's where a lot of your business is, but you guys are branching out all over the US right now?
Yes, yes. Okay. And we would, of course, use different contractors in Dallas than we would in New York, but our and analyzing buildings and how they operate and what they pay are very similar.
Well, who's your avatar? Who's your ideal candidate? Unit count. How do you? What's the ideal client for you?
My ideal client is someone who wants to make a change. The size, our sweet spot is between 30 and 100 apartments. And it's apartment buildings primarily. We do consult also townhomes, like HOA townhomes, but their structure is different. They don't have the same cost, but we can renegotiate those too. We have had buildings as small as 5 units because they had a long list of things that they needed to get done. And they were ready and they wanted to work with us. So they paid us on a project management basis. So no building is really too small, as long as it's a multifamily building. Depending on, if they only want us to reduce their electric cost, how much electricity do they really have in a 5-unit building in a little walk up, right? So, and our largest client is it's over 400 units.
Yeah. I think cost reduction services are so overlooked, and not just in the in general, like business owners and everybody. So it's like, people that are listening to this, if you can reduce your expenses, and listen, there's no out-of-pocket cost. So if they can't save you money, then they wasted their time, and obviously they're not here to waste your time or their time. So it's like, why wouldn't you want to use a service which is essentially free and they're going to save you money? It's just like kind of a no-brainer. So I hope whoever's watching this, you take note, and if you have a building, you can reach out to Tina. Tina, where's the best place to send people to find out more about your company?
Okay, so I'm most active on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn handle is Tina Larsson. That's 1 R and 2 S's, and then it's LI. Our website is thefolsongroup.com. That's THEFOLSON group.com. And my email is tina@thefolson group. You can call me. My phone number is visible on our website, which makes me getting a lot of robocalls, I guess.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Well, any other departing tips or tricks you want to leave with our audience?
Yes, I did want to add this, and I forgot to add it earlier. So one of the things is that there are many energy auditors who, many of them do one particular little part of the whole puzzle, or they sell one particular product that is used to reduce energy. But we look, because we're not associated with any particular service, we take a holistic approach and we look at all the different options, and we provide our clients with what we think is are the best options, and then they select from our menu of options.
Very good, Tina. This was very enlightening. And viewers, if you're watching this, I hope you got a lot out of this. Look for the savings, right? Get a company that's an expert in this field, and they can quickly do a initial assessment with you over the phone and look at some of your bills and so forth. And they're going to come back and benchmark and say, here's your low hanging fruit out of these 100 operational expenses. Here's the top 5 or so that we're going to start with, and this is where we think we're going to see the biggest savings here. And then they work their way through the operational expenses, ultimately trying to save you as much as possible, because remember, they're performance based only. So it's a win-win. I understand expense reduction pretty well, so I would highly recommend reaching out to Tina and her team And Tina, thanks for joining us. And everybody like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, Tina.
Thank you.